Hi, my name is Alex Barron with Digital Research Corporation, and I'm sitting here with the CEO and co-founder of Expensify, David. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm David, the founder and CEO of Expensify, and we do expense reports that don't suck.
I love it. All right, good stuff. So what is sort of like the typical use case of Expensify? Like walk me through a typical user and how they use it.
Sure. Well, Expensify is a service for business travelers. And so when you're on the road, you take a picture of your receipt with your mobile app. We will read all the information off the receipt automatically, so there's no typing involved. We'll submit it automatically to your company for reimbursement, and then we'll actually deposit the funds into your bank account tomorrow. And so we try to make the entire process of making a purchase to getting reimbursed for it next day, 24-hour reimbursement. And then of course, all of the integration in the back end, we integrate with all the accounting packages and basically all the approval structures the company needs.
Okay, I understand you also integrate with a number of providers like Uber, for example. Can you talk about how somebody who's going to visit a client and they use Uber to go visit that client? How does that?
Well, sure. I mean, the way we see it is that, it's called travel and expense, like there's two sides of the same coin. And so the best travel experience is one that anticipates your needs and uses the information about you to roll out a red carpet everywhere you go. And so with Expensify, when you land in the airport and we see that you have a reservation at a hotel in the same city, we will say as you're taxiing, and it's like, oh, welcome to San Francisco. We see that you have a reservation at W Hotel. Would you like us to pick up an Uber and take you right there? And so we have the advantage of knowing so much about our users because a major type of travel purchase is a flight, hotel, things like this. And so when you forward that receipt email to receipts@expensify.com, we read all the information off that receipt email and don't just get you reimbursed, but actually build an itinerary for you that you can use on the road. And so therefore, for example, when you, we'll give you live flight reminders, we'll give you flight change updates and things like this automatically built into the expense reporting system because the process of business travel is sort of blending together the reimbursement as well as the itinerary management itself.
Sure, okay, that's really interesting. So, what's a typical customer that you would have? Is there a particular industry you focus on or is it pretty broad?
Well, Expensify is a bit unusual. Our sales model is very different. And so as a result, we have the ability to serve the entire industry, which sounds sort of bold, but I would say we have customers from, of course, just like, about 4 million individuals, but also hundreds of thousands of businesses, as well as thousands of mid-sized businesses up into like Yahoo is one of our largest customers, for example. And we process expense reports for Yahoo globally. But all of the Silicon Valley unicorns use us. Both Uber and Lyft use us. It's the only thing they can agree upon. Everything starting with Zen uses us. So like Zen Payroll, Zenefits, Zendesk, all these guys. Evernote's been a long-time customer, and so I would say that we have customers up and down the stack, everything from Fortune 500 down to individual. Just by the nature of there are so many more small businesses than others, like by company count, they're mostly small business, but we have the ability to scale up and down the entire industry.
Okay, excellent. So, take a customer like Uber or Evernote and any of these. How did you first, get into these companies? Was it just one sales guy who started using Expensify and then it spread from there, or did you sort of target it more as an enterprise deal?
It's all the former, and that basically every deal has come in some variation on the same process, and that is an individual user who hates their expense reports will learn about us, typically from a friend. They'll download the Expensify app, they'll use it, think about it, lust after it, whatever it is, and in the process realize whatever they're currently using is awful, and it gets them really upset about it. They go to their peers and coworkers and like, why aren't we using Expensify? This is crazy. And then they will sort of surround their finance team with pitchforks and torches and demand Expensify by name. And that means that they actually reach out to us directly. We don't do any outbound calling. We don't do any advertising. It's all 100% organic and inbound. And this is why we can reach the entire marketplace, is because everyone who does expense reports knows someone else who does expense reports. And so as a result, we spread like wildfire via word of mouth into organizations that are not actually shopping for expense reports. Like the vast majority of our companies that adopt Expensify were not in market. Like they weren't out actually shopping around, and they adopted us without really comparing us to the alternatives anyway. And so it's a very different sales model, which accounts for our growth. I think Gartner said we're the fastest growing expense reporting company in the world. We grow about 140% year on year. Everyone else grows about 40% year on year. And so I think that our sales model is what drives kind of all the differences about the product.
Okay, good stuff. Is there one success story that you like to brag about, or one company?
Well, that's interesting. I think I like Yahoo's a great example. I mean, they're a big name, but I think what makes it interesting is that when Marissa came into Yahoo, she was very clear. Her number one priority was attracting and retaining the best talent. Every week, they have this all hands inside of Yahoo where they complain about internal processes and efficiencies and things like this. The number one complaint inside of Yahoo was their expense reporting system. And so there aren't many things that the CEO of a Fortune 500 company can do by fiat to dramatically improve the lives of all employees. But replacing their expense reporting system was one. And so we were very happy to be working with Yahoo, and we had a very quick rollout with them. It's actually been a great customer. But again, it's always come from the reason Yahoo reached out to us and the reason that employees were asking for us by name is because for a long time, Yahoo was a major source of churn. They kept acquiring our customers, like Flurry and Tumblr and things like this. We get acquired by Yahoo and then put back onto a different system. And so every time we did this, there were a few hundred more champions inside of Yahoo calling for us. And so by the time that the stars aligned, they were all calling for us. And so I think that's a reflection of how this sort of bottom-up adoption opportunity works, not just for small businesses, but also up to the Fortune 500.
Sure. So take a typical Fortune 500 like Yahoo or any other company who wants to start using Expensify. How quickly can they get on board and get it to all their employees?
Sure. Well, actually, with Yahoo is incredibly fast. I think that we had everyone up and going globally across all their offices within 6 months, which is kind of astonishing for a company that size. But typically, I would say that is probably the longest deployment we've ever done. I mean, for a typical company that's a small business, I would say, first half of all companies adopt without even talking to us. And so they just self-service, put down a credit card, fully set themselves up, and they're good to go. Of the rest, probably another, 40% actually just adopt with a couple of emails to our support team. And so basically, it's not really a sales team because they've already agreed to buy. It's just about I needed help setting up NetSuite or Oracle, whatever it is. And so then there's a small fraction that need a much more handheld experience, and we've got a team standing by for that as well. But really, we've focused so much on making the self-service process very efficient and easy, and that's, I think, really critical for this bottom-up sales dynamic, because we don't, you don't want to talk to a salesperson, we don't want you to talk to a salesperson, no one wins, everyone just wants to buy, and so we just make it really easy.
Okay, I think that's the best way to sell, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's best for both people. One, people aren't getting a bunch of cold calls and high pressure sales, but at the same time, it's great for you guys, just organic. So
yeah, it's been good.
That's how you have a great product, I think.
Thanks.
So then changing gears a little bit, so you have this great product, but you're also getting into venture investing. Could you talk a little bit about what you're looking to do there?
Sure. Well, so it's a new venture. It's called Expensify Ventures. It's a small seed fund that basically we realized that we are at a certain sort of market position that anybody who does anything in the expense reporting space, or travel, or payments, or image processing and things like this, they always come talk to us already, because typically they want to do a partnership, or they want advice, or they want introductions, or whatever that is. And so we had this, in a way, you can consider this deal flow, access to all these very early, fantastic companies that are relevant in space. And we were currently just sort of turning them down, or away, or just kind of ignoring them. And so we thought, well, we can do much more with these companies than just partner with them. We can actually, because what they're often coming to us is hey, can you introduce us to an investor in this space, and so forth. So we had this great opportunity, but on the other hand, we're a bit unusual because we don't have the massive spend of other companies. We're a profitable company, we just keep growing at scale. And so we have the resources to actually put back into some of our partners. And so it's not just about, so Ventures is not a classic a venture capitalist firm that's trying to seek a return for their LPs and things like this. This is really about partnership on steroids. We're basically saying we're picking the best of breed functionality, things that we would love to do but just don't have the resources or expertise to do, and then we're partnering with them, putting not just our money, but more importantly, our brand, our experience, our time, and our customers and users behind it as well. And so it's been really great so far. We've only announced one of our partners named Piper. They're a payments technology where they import the receipt image directly from the point of sale machine. And so with Piper enabled, we can actually get the image directly from a credit card swipe without having to even take a picture. We've already made one more investment, which we haven't announced yet. We've got more in the pipeline.
Okay. When do you plan to announce that?
I'm actually honestly not sure. I think we're waiting for just the right time.
Okay, fair enough. So let's change gears a little bit, and I'd love to know about what you were doing before Expensify.
Well, oddly, I've just been an engineer my whole life. I started when I was 6. I programmed computer graphics, video games. I went to the University of Michigan. I worked in the virtual reality lab. From there, I went down to Texas and I worked in the game industry for a while. Around 2000, I came out to Silicon Valley. I worked through a series of disastrous startups, most of which complete failures, but great education. And then I would say my last startup was the first real successful one. It's a company called Red Swoosh. It was me and Travis Kalanick, actually. He went on, so we built a company. You're familiar with like BitTorrent technology?
Sure.
So it's similar to that, but for legitimate content. So smaller user base, but at least you don't get sued into oblivion, so it worked out well. So we got acquired by Akamai in April of 2006, and then I left Akamai in April 2007 to start Expensify, and then I started Expensify, and then Travis started Uber.
Okay, good stuff. So, what was the inspiration behind Expensify? Was it something you were thinking about for years, or just hit you in 2007?
No, actually, it was quite different. Initially, I had no interest in expense reports whatsoever. It was something completely. I was trying to do an entirely different product as a prepaid debit card product, actually. And I went to the banks, and the banks were like, well, "This is way too weird," and it's like too weird, too risky. I'm like, okay, I need to sound low risk. I need to sound boring. I'm like, what is the most boring thing I can think about? Like, expense reports. And so I went back to those banks, and they're like, it's such a reimbursement. Like, hey, expense reports too. Like, that's safe. And so then I just used that as kind of a Trojan horse to actually launch my prepaid debit card concept that I initially had. We launched this at TechCrunch 50 in 2008, and everyone's like, whoa, your cards are interesting and creative and all that, but your expense reports are amazing. And so after that, we realized, well, actually the expense reporting is the way more interesting in these problems, and so we focused everything on that ever since.
Okay, fair enough. So in those early days, what were the big challenges that you had to overcome?
But I would say that the hardest challenge is having the conviction to actually believe in your own model. Because everything we've done has been incredibly weird. Like when we were the first to do mobile receipt scanning, for example. And we started because we saw where the technology was going to go, but at the time it wasn't quite there. Like the first iPhone had a terrible camera. Every picture you took with it, you just couldn't read it. And so we have a receipt scanning app that just doesn't work because the receipts just can't be read. But then the next generation iPhone had an autofocus camera, so suddenly that gets really great. Or we start off trying to do the same advertising as everyone else, like AdWords and things like this, but there's really no search volume there. Like if you search, we're the highest organic search result for expense reports. Expense reports, like the best possible keywords, but it's our number 16 traffic source. It accounts for 0.1% of our traffic. And so we're like, well, we can't advertise. There's a lot of weird challenges, but the things that we're working super well. Like we're one of the first enterprise mobile apps. At a time when we launched, everyone's like, oh, apps are for games. And no, we're going to do it for the enterprise. That's crazy. Or we're going to sell with a mobile app through the employees to the enterprise. Everyone's like, that's ridiculous. It's like everyone knows this is going to require this massive top-down enterprise sales model. It's the way everyone has ever done it. That's the way it'll ever be done. And so we struggled with this. It was like, yeah, I hear that. That makes sense what you're saying, but the data just says something completely different. And so it's the biggest challenge is always to just believe in yourself, believe in your team, and believe in your convictions. Because if you're an entrepreneur, it's because you think you're just smarter than the next guy. So why would you listen to the next guy next to you? I mean, I think that it's just so hard to bet on yourself and your idea and tune out everything else.
Sure. That makes sense. But it sounds like you also had some useful data to back up that conviction as well.
I guess, but but data itself is also kind of overrated because I'd say everyone wants to be making decisions based upon data. Invariably, the data is never there when you need it, at least not in any sort of statistically relevant fashion. And so you're always making decisions on hunches. And by the time the data backs you up, it's too late. Either you should have made that decision years ago. And so I'd say data is good for sort of confirming you're on the right path, but it's not very good at steering.
Okay, makes sense. And then the worst case scenario, you might be measuring the wrong thing. The data is telling you one thing, but it's actually the real story is something more complicated.
Agreed. So I think it's just I think it's a real challenge to not be misled by statistically insignificant data.
Okay, so sounds like that's some advice for startup founders. Do you have any other advice for founders?
My main piece of advice would just be don't ask for advice.
Okay.
Basically the odds of you finding someone who actually has the relevant experience to give you a good answer is so slim. It's actually, you'd have to ask a whole bunch of people and then somehow sift through all the ideas and figure out which one. In the same amount of time, you could have just figured it out. And actually, and by getting to the habit of figuring things out, even the easy things, like, in fact, it's even more important to practice on the easy things. People are so afraid to reinvent the wheel, but like, wheels are easy to build. So get to the habit of actually figuring out the easy stuff, and then you're actually going to be trained and ready to actually tackle some of the hard stuff that no one else has done. Otherwise, you're always just catching up to everyone else, and that's just not a great place to be.
Sure. I think that's really good non-advice advice.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the things that makes Expensify really unique is that I understand you do a 1-month trip abroad. You allow your employees to work remotely. Could you talk about how you bring that stuff together while still being such a productive and effective company?
Well, I'd say the challenge is, so we take the whole company overseas for a month every year. We did it every year. Last year we did, I think, Portugal. Before that was Croatia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and it's all over the place. And I think the idea is to get the whole company into a place that's just as foreign as possible. Totally different time zone, different culture, different foods, different language. It's completely different as possible. Because you want to sort of have people break out of their office developed habits. Because no matter who you are, you can't help but sort of fall into the same routines. You do the things today, not because you really sat down and thought about it and said, these are the things that I should do, it's just because it's what you did yesterday. It seemed to work out pretty well. And so I think that the idea of the offshore is to specifically get people out of their comfort zone and to throw obstacles in the way such that people are forced to really grapple with, do I really need to do the things I do? And so I'd say, like, whether it's engineering or marketing or sales or support or whatever it is, it's really hard running an organization from a beach in Thailand, but it's super fun. And so trying to tackle that challenge brings everyone together. It creates a ton of really creative ideas, and then invariably drives sort of the roadmap for the next year, as well as just really binding the team together in a way that just no amount of time in the office would ever produce. So there's a huge range of benefits to it, and it's hard to pick out specifics. I would say that the aggregate of it all is it just creates for an incredibly innovative and passionate group of people that are unafraid of anything. Because if we know we've solved some other easier challenges, when we look forward, we're like, we know, I don't know how we're going to solve this, but we've solved harder problems before, and so I'm just confident we will. And I think that creating that sort of esprit de corps, that the group of people who just trust each other and are willing to charge into the unknown, I think it's been a really great tool for that.
Okay, I love it. I wish more companies would do that.
Hey, that'd be great.
So we should probably wrap up soon, but I have 2 last questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, what's next on the horizon for Expensify?
Next on the horizon, so I'd say maybe 2 sides. I would say first, more of the same, in the sense that the core problem of expense reporting is a surprisingly complicated one, and it's because it's dealing with a huge range of processes across a wide diversity of companies. And I would say that there's just a lot more work to be done to make the process totally seamless. For example, we're in the process of rolling out a new generation of technology that adds a completely new level of automation that we haven't seen in the past. For example, in a typical expense reporting platform, at least one of the modern ones, you take a picture of the receipt, you have to create an expense report, you have to add it to the expense report, you can type everything in, then you've got to submit it, someone receives it, they have to look at it, they have to look through all the expenses, they've got to approve it, send it to someone else who reimburses. There's a lot of steps that go into that. And the vast majority of those steps just don't need to happen. And so what we've done is added a whole bunch of automation such that as an employee, the only thing you should need to do is take a picture of the receipt and put your phone in your pocket. We're automatically going to create the right expense report for you, just as your accountant wants, put it onto the expense report for you, submit it at the right time. We're going to automatically double check it against various sources, make sure that it's correctly categorized and so forth, so that no one even needs to manually approve it, automatically trigger the reimbursement, push the accounting system. And so there's a whole generation of automation that we're working on right now, which I'd say is sort of the first half of the next big thing. And the second half is really using this incredible accumulation of data that we have built up over the years to build as a platform on which to build a tremendous range of different applications. Like the Uber integration is a good example of that. We can do it because we know where you're going to be before you get there, because we're already tapped into your accounting system so that we can pull in the Uber receipt, put it in the right place, and provide the super seamless experience. Uber is just one example of a wide range of things that we're going to be doing to make the travel experience which itself has been, it's as bad as the expense reporting process, or even if not worse, because you're on the road, it's just a terrible experience. We want to use all of the data and automation that we have to make for a seamless travel experience in the real world, not just in your expense report.
Okay, good stuff. Now, last, where can people go to learn more about Expensify?
It's very easy to find. Go to expensify.com, search Expensify on any of the app stores, or just turn to whoever hates expense reports most near you and ask them, have you heard about Expensify? And they probably have.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, David. Best of luck.
Thank you.